Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our Immigration Chai Chat series, Volume 3, where we talk about kind of current events that's affecting our community as it pertains to immigration. And there's a lot to talk about at this point. This specific chat is focused on international travel because not Santa's not the only one crossing borders. We have to do our thing too. Visit family and friends. Family and friends are visiting us. But things aren't always easy and what they seem to be. And so, today we have an expert on kind of coming into the United States and what you need to do, what our rights are, and all of that. So Arwa Zakir Kakavand. I'm sorry if I messed up the pronunciation. She is a managing attorney at Casa Cornelia Law Center. And we have my colleague Lolita Aladi. She is from the Aladi Law, also an immigration attorney. And yeah, we just like torture, I guess. It's good to practice this. And myself, always forget to do myself. I'm Rohit Biswas. I work for HSF Kramer. I do business immigration. I'm the VP of advocacy. Leith is the president-elect, soon to be president. And yeah, we will talk to you and hopefully give you some good tips about traveling. You could share with your family and friends. This will also be recorded. So if you want to refer to this video at any point, we're going to have this on our YouTube channel for Saba NA. Use this as a resource. We're doing it so we have a good library of resources and videos that we as a community can look back on, and it can help us, especially in this kind of environment and administration where the laws are changing and we need to be on top of it. The disclaimer, this does not constitute as legal advice. If you have a specific issue that you need help with, contact an immigration attorney or an attorney that is specializing in what your issue is. So please, this is kind of general advice that we're giving, and we hope you find it useful. So with that, uh, I will kick it off to one of the updates of the day of the week with the H-1B visa cancellations and social vetting at the consulates, right? Social media vetting. Good thing I haven't posted it on my Instagram since, 5 years ago. But if you have, maybe this is something you want to listen to. So,
Yeah.
Lalitha, we've gotten a lot of questions, comments, concerns. A lot of
Yes.
people are traveling to see their families to India or abroad. And these appointments, these H-1B visa appointments have gotten canceled. And they maybe can't come back, right? So, can you tell us a little bit about first the social media vetting and
Yeah.
the ruling that the directive that came out in December 3rd,
Yeah.
and then relatedly the H-1B visa cancellations, and then we can kind of go from there.
Yeah. So, yeah, as many of you may have heard, on December 3rd, there was a directive that was saying that in order to protect the security of our government, that there needs to be more vetting, stronger vetting process for all visas. And because of that, part of that additional vetting is going to include a review of individuals or applicants' social media content. And so in the past, this has happened when people apply for green cards. They've said that there would be additional vetting, that they need to make their social media public so that when, at that point, usually USCIS or Department of State wants to review it, they can easily access all of their social media and see if there are any security threats or what they perceive to be security threats. Now they're saying that this is going to be happening across the line here, for B1 visas, visitor visas, not just that, now for H1B visas and so many more. So you can expect that if you're going to go to the US consulate for any of these interviews, that this additional vetting will take place. And it said that it will take place as of December 15th. That timing is not ideal because, as we know, many of our friends and family travel to India, Pakistan, wherever, to visit family and then simultaneously get their visa stamping appointment taken care of so that they can travel later on for pleasure, for work, whatever that might look like. And so many of them have already planned these holidays. Maybe they're already out. And now they're all receiving, they planned it such that the timing would work. They made that visa appointment during that trip,
They
uh,
only get so many days off, right? I mean,
right? And they were able to secure that appointment, and they're happy about it. And now their travel plans are getting messed up because they're all receiving notifications that their appointments have been canceled, that they will be rescheduled, because they have to implement further procedures to their computer system or whatever that looks like for them in order to be able to comply with this additional vetting process. Now, when people, obviously, this is causing again another mad rush onto the consulate website to see how they can reschedule their appointments right away because they have to get back usually to work or family or both to the United States. And when they go online to do that, the appointments are not easily available. They are
right,
pushed out quite a bit. Some of them are reporting that they're not getting appointments till May or June. You can only imagine what the conversations are like if they're talking not only to their family, but to their employers.
right.
Are they going to be able to keep their job? Are they going to be let go? So it is causing a lot of panic right now. But this is the latest. As of the last 1 or 2 days, we've been receiving several reports about this.
Is there anything, Lolita, that they can do to maybe get an earlier appointment? Another consulate, maybe? Is that a issue? Is that a maybe option?
Well, it's almost like they predicted this because a few weeks back, they already implemented another rule that said that your appointment for these visas need to be in your home country. Before, I mean, this has always been the case. It should be in your home country. However, there have been situations where an individual might say, hey, you know what? I'm just going to pop over to Mexico or Canada. I'll get a visa for that country. I'm going to go to the consulate there, get my visa stamped over there. That way I can travel around for work. Even prior to this rule being emphasized a few weeks ago, this has always been the case, but sometimes it's been flexible and they've allowed it. And especially if you are already having a lot of business there, or you have, let's say, maybe permanent residence in that other country, a lot of work in that country, they can allow it because, yes, it's a third party country, but in some situations they would allow it. Right now, having stated this rule so explicitly in the past couple of weeks, we don't expect that that's going to be possible either.
So
So,
can't go to Singapore or
right,
Bangkok
right.
and get this done
I
instead,
mean,
right?
you can
That's
try, but the
you can
chance
try,
of
but
getting that appointment and securing it is going to be pretty slim.
yeah. And it seems like to your point, a plan that first you say you can't apply at another consulate, and then you say,
Shutting
well,
down.
now you can't apply at all in this consulate. So um, if it's not a plan, it's very coincidental. So is there a way to expedite? Could you do that?
Yeah, so they can try to put in a request to expedite it. If that's the case, they need to be prepared with documents to show why it needs to be expedited. So maybe if you have, something at work that is going to cost the company a few $1 million, and you need to be there, your presence is necessary. You want to show those types of documents, or maybe because of certain health issues and personal issues, you need to get back. Maybe you are the primary caregiver for children who are still in the home country, or not home country, in the US, and you need to return for that. So you want to have documents always backing up the reason that you're providing to say that this needs to be expedited. So that's going to be key. And that's one thing you can try.
To expedite the appointment. Now, so, if you're here, you're trying to plan a trip, you're going to go for your visa renewal. What would be your advice right now for kind of anyone who maybe has a visa and needs to go and renew it and then come back?
Yes.
Um, would you say don't go?
I'm going to, before I kick that over to Arwa, to
Yeah.
have that question answered, I do want to answer a question that came up in the chat That's to say, if you are a permanent resident in another country, then it is definitely worth a try to
Yeah.
schedule an appointment in that other country, the US consulate in that country, because then at least you have ties to that country. It is not your exact home country, but you still have strong ties there. So it is definitely worth it to try and schedule an appointment at that other country. So thank you for that question, Adita.
Yeah, especially if you, the I think the ruling directive said citizenship or residency. So
Yeah,
if you have documentation showing that,
yeah,
that hopefully that should win the day.
definitely. Yeah. So yeah, I'm just gonna kick over the other question to Arwa. If people want to travel purely for stamping purposes or otherwise, where do we start with that, Arwa, if you're on a visa?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. Excited to be here. And I think it depends on what your status is. So starting with the visa holders, so the non-immigrant visa holders like students, workers, employment based visas, I think you would want to make sure that your visa stamp and your passport are valid for at least 6 months past the intended day that you return back to the United States, that you have no prior status violations, any arrests, any removal orders, any pending change or extension of status that would deem your departure, that would deem your application abandoned or your visa abandoned by your departure.
Mhm.
Um, I would recommend avoiding or delaying international travel if you're in a vulnerable type category. So if you've had a prior visa overstay, you have some criminal history, or you have pending applications for asylum or any other humanitarian protection, or you've had a prior immigration fraud finding. And then I guess just to touch on what you just talked, like you should have a backup plan if you're going to get visa stamping in a country with a heavy delay or disruption, like some of the countries you mentioned.
Would
Um,
you, I mean, question to both of you, would you cancel if you needed that visa now rather than test your luck? Would you cancel your travel plans?
Personally, I would, yeah.
Yeah, that's
Well, and I think that's the thing, right? It's you're going for stamping, and the purpose of stamping is so you can return to the US. But if your stamping is going to be so heavily delayed, you should not take that risk right now.
yeah. If you can help it, yeah,
Correct, correct.
yeah.
It's different if you have, some a death in the family or some
Right.
ill who's sick, but
Or if
in
you're already there, if you're, yeah,
emergency travel.
yeah, exactly. Like I think even if you're trying to go for a vacation, I agree with both of you that I would hold off on travel if you need to go to the embassy and get a visa. We don't know what's going on in terms of what's going to happen in the
Mhm.
next month or so, right? Because, or we're talking a little bit, but in terms of the current climate, there seems to be an increase in kind of scrutiny and vetting, especially with after some events.
Mhm.
Certain countries got put on the national ban list. Can you talk a little bit about kind of what the current climate is a little bit and what we can look out for?
Yeah, I think that so as everyone knows, the National Guard shooting, I think that we'll see that play out as intensified suspicion towards South Asians generally, Middle Eastern individuals, people with Muslim appearing, um, you know,
Features.
basically, yeah, exactly. Including people who are perceived as Muslim, I think. Um, and so we can probably expect more quote unquote random secondary inspections at airports, more probing questions about religion and politics and scrutiny of their community ties, their speech online, so their social media, or even comments that they've made on other people's posts,
Hmm.
who they follow, things like that. So I think, you know, this is something that you can expect to happen, but then you should also remember that you have certain rights at the border or at even in the interior of the US. I mean, your rights get considerably more and more limited as your status becomes less um kind of permanent or starting with a US citizen to LPR to, as you whittle down your status, your rights also kind of go with that. But everyone has some inherent rights, not to be profiled, not to be stopped and searched or questioned just based on their race or their nationality or their religion.
Well,
Um, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, no, sorry. You mentioned so many things that I want to talk about, actually. I think you've hit like four or five subjects that we want to delve into a little bit more. So if we could break it down,
Sure.
we've heard a lot about how essentially racial profiling can be used at the border. Can you talk to us a little bit about whether that is being done? What can they do? What can you do? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I think you should always travel with a lot of, you know, all the types of documents that are required under your status, valid documents or documents with validity that goes beyond the time that you intend on traveling. If you're a green card holder, you should definitely try to keep your travel limited to less than 6 months so that you don't have issues coming back, or you should have advanced parole, or not, sorry, what's the not advanced parole for LPRs, it's
Reentry
something
permit.
yeah.
Transfer.
Hmm.
Um, and if you're employment based, or if you're in a more vulnerable category, like an asylum seeker or TPS, temporary protected status holder, DACA recipient, you should, I mean, I would advise against leaving without
Yeah.
advanced parole first. I would just advise against not traveling if you can help it. Um, but at the border, you can always ask for to speak with a supervisor. If you can ask for same gender officer or an interpreter if you need one.
Mhm.
And then I think everyone should document any discriminatory treatment, and that they can later file like a civil rights complaint if it's egregious enough to
Sure.
rise to that level.
Ye-
Now, sorry, go ahead, Rohit.
No, I guess my question is from U.S. citizen to green card holder to visa holder to are there varying levels of kind of what they can ask you, or if you're a U.S. citizen, it doesn't matter, like what can they ask you? If I'm a U.S. citizen, I give them my passport. They're like,
Hmm.
no, we don't believe it's you, right? What's my recourse? Do I have any?
I think at the border you have less. I mean, you can be subject to secondary inspection, but you
Right.
have the absolute right to enter the U.S. as a U.S. citizen. You might experience delays or device searches, but that's still possible. You can decline. Actually, I think at the border, CBP has the right to search your um, without a warrant. But yeah, you might experience those delays, but you still have the absolute right to enter the country. So I think the processing time might take a long time for you
Right.
in secondary.
And as we go down the spectrum, green card holder, is that the
Mhm.
same kind of right, or how does that work?
I think they have robust entry rights, but they're more limited than a U.S. citizen, so they can be placed in proceedings if the DHS believes that they are inadmissible for any reason. So if they've committed
Interesting.
certain crimes or fraud, or they've had a long absence outside of the U.S., that would indicate that they've abandoned their LPR status. Um, and then non-immigrants and parolees, I think, have kind of the least amount of rights. So they can be refused admission and returned to their home country if CBP concludes that they're inadmissible, if they pose a threat to security, or if they're subject to a ban of, a national ban or.
The travel ban.
Mhm.
Yeah. Coming back to the green card though, one thing that when we talked about this, I think before in one of our other sessions, but is important enough to discuss right now. Those who have a green card, if they are being stopped at the border, sometimes they're not sure what they're signing. They're asked to sign a document. Most likely that's to give up your green card. And it's very important that individuals not sign that, instead say that they want to be seen in front of a
Mhm.
judge, right? Because they're
Yeah.
a permanent resident, and before they have that taken away from them, they have a right to a hearing. So,
Yeah.
you, you know,
Yeah, so I mean, I would highly advise everyone to carry a rights card with them. So those red cards, I mean, they don't have to be red, but just basically what the three basic rights are. So your right to remain silent, to refuse a search, or your right to ask if you're free to leave, and that you would like to speak to an attorney before, speaking or signing anything in your case. And so I think in that situation, I would definitely, because I don't think you have a right to an attorney during a secondary inspection.
that's what I was going to say is they unfortunately at the border, they don't have a right to an attorney However, they do have the right to a hearing before any status is taken, or I should say the green card is
Mhm.
taken away. So they can ask to be seen, and at that time, then they would be able to get an attorney.
So not where I currently work, but I was working at an appellate immigration firm. And we would do, I mean, this was pre-Trump 2.0, but for people who had been outside of the US, LPRs specifically, for a long period of time, we would create a packet for them,
Well,
kind of highlighting their ties to the US and have all their documents kind of indexed so that they're easy to access because we are not able to be there for the secondary
correct.
inspection or the questioning. And so maybe that would be something to consider too. It's like to kind of anticipate the questions that you're going to be asked and have your attorney prepare something in advance of your travel.
Exactly. And for that type of thing that is so individualist, like having to do their individual cases, that would be the type of thing. Again, someone should consult with an attorney if they have been outside for that long to figure out how they're going to prove their various ties to the US before returning so that they're prepared as much as possible.
Yep.
Yeah. Uh, what about this advanced parole? There's a fee associated, the $1,000 fee. What type of
Oh,
case?
yeah. Yeah, I think it's not for parole subject, like related to adjustment, right? Certain adjustment categories are exempt. I think you would definitely in this situation want to speak with an attorney to see if your category would be exempt from the parole, but it's basically $1,000 fee for many parolees that are entering or re-entering in the US. And it started on, I think, October 16th, perhaps, of this year. So
Mhm.
they can collect the fees at any port of entry for initial parole, re-parole, or parole from custody. Um, and I think it applies mostly to discretionary parole programs, where a person is paroled in at the port of entry or from DHS custody.
Yeah.
Um, but if it's incident to a pending adjustment status application, I think that it doesn't apply in those situations.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I would recommend everyone confirm with an attorney before traveling.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of kind of what you should be carrying, could you've kind of made up a checklist here that we have that we'll share kind of onto you know onto everyone. I think we can drop it on the group chat, or we also will share it on the advocacy newsletter that's going to come out next week.
Mhm.
So it's an extensive checklist that you can use to kind of go through, and when you're going through kind of traveling in the airport, use it. It has a lot of good topics. One of the topics on it, I think, Arwa, you talk about kind of mixed status families. So if one's a green card holder, one's a US citizen, you know, how should people travel in terms of that, right? What's the best practice and process in your mind to do that?
I think that in a mixed status family, you would definitely identify the person that has the cleanest record or has like the most stable status. So a US citizen or an LPR within that family, and then have kind of designate them as the primary speaker when answering questions with immigration officials.
Mm.
You should carry original and backup copies of all documents, so passports, birth certificates, green card, custody orders, any medical or educational records for your children. Um, and then you should do some kind of family planning is not the right word, but like planning for like any kind of circumstances that might happen that you can foresee happening. So like having kind of a larger conversation with your family before you travel, designating someone as like giving power of attorney to someone, designating
Right.
someone as the emergency point of contact, and making sure all of like a digital backup or copies of all of these documents are in a secure place that someone can access.
Can they access electronic records and all of that as well?
The family members.
Yeah, of the family members.
I think, yeah, I think if you create a system where someone can access that, maybe you have it somewhere, and you give someone the password or access to that digital copy, in case they need it. And I
Got it.
see this a lot, I mean, not with traveling a lot, but through the nonprofit that I work for, we run a hotline for people who are subject to immigration enforcement. And a lot of and we need basic information like someone's A number. And so
Mhm.
family members, we've done a lot of outreach in the community, like have a plan in place in case something like this happens. And of course, people don't think that it's going to happen to them until it happens to them. And so, one of the basic questions we need is full name, A number, date of birth, and we honestly can't do anything without those three and country of origin, obviously. But so having giving someone access to that information is so valuable, depending on, what circumstances might take place after travel or during travel.
So how does that work? Or you go to the airport and from what you've seen, what my first question is, how does that work? Like you go to the airport, say, you know, s- I'm a green card holder, my spouse is a US citizen, I have a couple of arrests, and do they take the spouse away and and you're left as a US citizen, and what should you do in that case, right? How does that specifically work in terms of next steps, and do you contact an attorney or do you talk to a supervisor or and secondly, have you seen an increase in that?
I personally haven't. I mean, I have in the interior, but not while traveling.
Yeah.
But I would, yeah, in the US, I mean, I think this is a conversation you have as a mixed status family with your attorney before you travel, like for an eventuality like that. And I think in that situation, the US citizen is in the best position to advocate for their non-US citizen family members.
Hmm.
And they would probably be at liberty to call the attorney and kind of figure out what to do next. But yeah, you should definitely have your attorney's card, like a physical card, not just a digital card in
Yeah.
case you don't have access to your phone. Um, and have, and memorize the numbers of important contacts before you travel so you can, if you're left with nothing but the ability to make a phone call, you can call someone.
We have to remember those phone numbers old school.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Just impossible now.
I know. So we've talked a little bit, we've touched on this travel ban. There's 16 countries on the list. There's talk about it expanding to 30 countries. What do we think? Do we think there are going to be South Asian countries added to that list? What are some thoughts? Especially even at your nonprofit, right? With the work that you do, is there some talk about what's expected? What are you hearing?
Yeah, I mean, I think from what I've been reading, the countries that they're suggesting to expand to are largely like African countries with existing security or vetting concerns, such as Nigeria and Ethiopia. I haven't really seen anything that lists besides Afghanistan, which is already on the near, or sorry, the total restriction category. I haven't seen any of the South Asian countries.
Yeah.
Well, Myanmar, Burma's on there too. I don't know if that qualifies as a South Asian country, but yeah, I think it's mostly and some Middle Eastern countries like Syria, South Sudan. They're thinking of adding those, but there hasn't been any official
Right.
notice or countries identified.
Yeah.
So I think I would advise people to just keep monitoring the official websites like DHS, DOS, CBP websites to see if um, you know, any updates. I mean, 24 hours from now, I think everything the way
Everything.
that, yeah.
Yes, things can change. And I mean, that's part of why I know that sometimes, when I'm talking to clients, I seem like, or I think many of us, when we're talking to our clients these days, we seem like we're doing nothing but just bringing about these like suspicion or
Right.
panic, but
Hmm.
they're really trying to protect our clients because here you are, those folks who traveled on the H-1B that have said, "Hey, I've always been able to travel. I have an H-1B. I know I'm good." And they leave, but now they're stuck outside the country. If things
Hmm.
happen within 24 hours, right? eh, There's there's no advance notice, then people will be stuck outside. And so that's what we're trying to prevent because this list could get expanded tomorrow.
Hmm.
You're on that
Yeah.
list, you may not be able to re-enter the US.
Yes.
And so that's
Uh,
our concern when we advise. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, there's nothing. I think the best advice is just to stay in close contact with your attorney. Um, and as attorneys, I think it's kind of at this point incumbent on us to provide the necessary updates to our clients if it's applicable to them in real time so that they can make decisions based on that. But yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like every day that list grows like larger and larger of things that we have to do
Right.
as diligent attorneys in this
Um, we
space.
have a question here, but I feel like, we've already touched on it, but this is a kind of more particular question. Any advice for students traveling on F1 to Pakistan? I don't see how it's very different than what we're saying.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think have all well, Pakistan's not on the list of
Yeah.
banned countries, so I think the same advice would apply to a Pakistani national that's on an F1. So it's a non-immigrant visa. You should have basically proof of a valid status. I think your I-20 SEVIS
Yeah.
status, everything should be kind of in order and valid, well beyond the time that you're away. And yeah, for students especially, I think the scrutiny on social media and whatever you're posting in public forums is particularly relevant to students. And so I would just be cautious about that. And I also think that I don't think for purposes of these enhanced vetting measures that people should delete their accounts solely based on that. I think that that could also
Mm.
pose a red flag to officials when they see scrubbed accounts and so just try to be more cautious about what you're posting or posting at all. Um,
Yeah.
Well, and I think I would even say, not that this has been, what should I say, called out so specifically, I would say students almost have to be more careful because
mhm,
we've just seen in general so many issues for students, right? In March, there was a whole thing with CVIS and how they looked at their backgrounds. And some people may have just had a speeding ticket and yet their CVIS
mhm,
was, pulled. And with that, and now this added layer of, vetting, I would also add
Right.
on to that, that they are being very careful when F1 students come, are they then changing to an H-1B status? All of these things, right?
mhm.
There's this heightened scrutiny. I don't mean to use actually a legal term when I say that because it's not been
Yeah.
um, openly said that way. But we just, I think they just have to exercise a lot more caution because there is additional scrutiny in these areas. So
Yeah.
if you're a student, I just think you're more susceptible to having issues.
I think if you're a student, also talk to your designated school official.
Yeah.
Get that letter. You'll see in the checklist that we disseminate that, you know, you get that letter. It's not dispositive, but it's a letter from the registrar saying you go to this school, you're enrolled in coursework, things like that, right? So, with all of these entries, I think that the name of the game or the theme is, document, 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 right? It's why you are coming to the United States and what you're doing in the United States and have as much documentation as you can for that stuff, right? And to that point, um, Alita Arwa, it's not just about you coming in, it's about your family also
Mhm.
coming in, right? It's about your people who live abroad coming in on tourist visas, right? In that sense, how would you recommend documenting or advising them to document within their entry into the United States or applying for a visa?
So assuming they already have the visa, or
Yeah.
if they qualify for a visa waiver, they should also check to see if their nationality is already or likely to be added to the travel ban list. Because things change by the minute, and so if they've already made plans to travel and the new list comes out and their country is on it, they should definitely prepare strong evidence of ties to their home country. So a job or a business that they own property that they own, family that they have, and their clear travel plans. So there should be a realistic length of stay in the United States. And they should be prepared for like this kind of aggressive questioning from the consular officers and CBP about what their intentions are in coming to the US. Again, they're probably subject to enhanced vetting. Their online presence can probably be scrutinized the same way that people traveling from the United States can be subject to those kinds of levels of scrutiny.
And they can check your phones and all of that, right? So
Hmm. Yeah.
so sorry, go ahead.
And I was just saying on the phone thing with to disable your Face ID and maybe just have a password to log into your phone instead of Face ID because I think that that kind of adds another layer to you know to searching your phone.
I want to add, because you mentioned, Arwa, that they need to bring all this evidence about their ties, right? So I just want to differentiate. One thing they need to come here to the US is some type of invitation letter or purpose, right? Why are you visiting? Show us proof that you're
Hmm.
visiting. That's one aspect of it. But when we're talking about their ties, we are referring to the ties to the home country because
Hmm.
this is a temporary visit. It's just a visit. What's going to take you back to your home country? That's what you're trying to prove. And that's what we're talking about, right? I
Right.
want to
Yes.
differentiate it so they know what type of evidence. Yes, you need a purpose to be here in the US, but it better be temporary so that you can prove you have to get back permanently
Hmm.
to your home country.
Yeah. So yeah, ties for both places. So ties to the U. Who are you visiting? Why are you visiting? All of that. And
Yeah.
then also, what are your plans about
Stronger
going back?
ties at the
Yeah,
home.
exactly.
Yeah.
And one thing that we can actually link here in two topics is a couple of months ago, there's the H-1B proclamation.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
what they talked about within the proclamation was that we're also going to limit these B2 people coming into the United States and applying for H-1B,
Hmm.
and to get out of this $100,000 fee, right?
Right.
So that might be another kind of strict interpretation where if they see someone and let's say they see you have a job interview on your email, or you're coming in to do some
Hmm.
work for a company, right? They might really scrutinize that, especially in light of this H-1B proclamation, say, you're trying to circumvent the rules here. You're
Hmm.
trying to come in on B and apply for an H-1B. So the protection of U.S. workers is one of the key goals of the administration.
Right.
And with that protection, I think comes the scrutiny of you better not be coming here to kind of work, which is not the purpose of the B, right? So, or the
Hmm.
S or visa waiver. Like, so, you know, be careful, in terms of what's on your laptop and how much work you're going to be doing in the United States, because work is not allowed on a temporary business visitor visa.
Hmm.
It's just not
Right.
allowed.
Well,
Even
and
yeah, even if you're getting paid by, abroad, your company is abroad, work is just not allowed unless you have a work visa. So I think that's a point people don't sometimes get because they're like working all the time maybe, and maybe in other countries it's different, but if you're coming in on a B visa, that's not allowed. And that's, when you're answering those questions with the CBP officers, you want to answer truthfully, and you want to say that, yeah, I'm not going to be working.
there was a lot of confusion when those proclamations came out.
Yeah.
But one thing that was clear, like you mentioned, was yes, you cannot start here on the B2 and then go for the H1. So the officers will have the information if you already have an H1 that's approved. So
Hmm.
suppose you already have a B2 stamp, you don't have an H1 stamp, and you were just, you only have the approval notice, and you try to come across the border on that B2
Hmm.
later trying to change status to an H1B, they're going to predict that red flag. They've already predicted it by putting
Hmm.
it in that proclamation. So, I know people sometimes think they're being smart and they're, circumventing that 100,000, but they're
Yeah.
they're going to be looking out for that if you already have an approval notice.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that also applies to, I mean, humanitarian protection too. I feel like because that is you have an immigrant intent, right? When you're applying for asylum, for example. And
Yeah.
so some of people that we've done consultations with, they're here on an F1, pursuing a master's legitimately, like not just here on a
Yeah.
student visa to do other things, but um, decided against applying for asylum because they feared the cancellation of their F1 visa if they have these conflicting intents, right? And
Yeah.
so that's also something to think about. I mean, if you have a legitimate asylum claim, that shouldn't dissuade you from applying for one, but it could result in the cancellation of your student visa or your other valid visa.
Hmm. Yeah. So, we're anything else in the news that we want to touch on? We do like to sometimes see what's going on in the news and, if there's anything to be commented. I think travel wise, this has been the main information that we have seen.
Hmm.
Um, what about domestic travel? Or not even domestic. I think this is one of our favorite questions that we get. Hey, can I go on a cruise to the Caribbean? And is that a problem? Is that like, I'm going to be on the boat. I'm going to be in the United States. Is that a problem?
Or
Each one of you
I'm
take
I'm
that.
doing domestic travel to Canada. Um,
Domestic travel to Canada. Is that true? Is that real?
I've gotten
I
that before.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I think the same international travel. I mean, it's an international trip, so the
Waters,
same,
international waters.
yeah. So same thing, yeah. Just make sure you understand that you are leaving the country and not just going on a trip on a cruise. Um,
Then what about domestic travel? Should there still be some concern? I know that you provide in that letter another great checklist. What do you differentiate between the international travel and the domestic travel? What should individuals carry with them? Because now maybe most of them are just going to stay domestic, which is fine, but still, what
mhm.
should they be carrying with them?
Mm,
So domestic, I mean, I think they've been trying to limit domestic travel too, or not limit domestic travel, but increase enforcement. And a way of doing that is to have heightened requirements for domestic travel. So you used to be able to travel without a real ID document, not anymore. I think this summer they've
mhm,
enforced that. And so a lot of documents that non-citizens have don't qualify as real ID documents. It's becoming harder for them to get state IDs that are real ID compliant. And so to make sure that before you travel, especially by air, even domestically, that you have the right documentation to do that. And same kind of rules, like you have documentation of your status in the United States with you, even for domestic travel. Um, and just know that if you are pending status, so like if you have an application for a certain type of status, but you haven't been approved, even if you have a prima facie determination, that's not enough for you to be insulated from any type of enforcement in the interior of the US. So you're just opening that kind of you're opening yourself up to that risk every time you travel, especially by air. And
Yeah.
then where I live in San Diego, there's so many checkpoints. We're a border town. And so if you go north, there's a checkpoint. If you go east, there's a checkpoint. So and a CBP checkpoint. Sorry, I should be more clear about that. But and so a lot of the people that call us are people who, and we have a lot of military presence here in San Diego, and there's a lot of military bases. So a lot of our clients are Uber drivers or, you know, and they have dropped someone off onto a military base and then they get arrested and detained. And so just to be very careful about kind of your if you can limit your travel
Yeah.
to areas that are not heightened enforcement areas. But then you have those same rights, right? Like you have the right to remain silent. You have the right to ask if you're free to leave. You have the right to consult with an attorney before answering any questions. Um, and without probable cause, they have no right to search your car without your consent or without a valid warrant. And then also knowing the difference between a valid warrant and an invalid warrant,
Mhm.
I think is very important for domestic traveling too. So
Can you talk about that a little bit?
sure, yeah, a valid warrant is a warrant signed by a district court judge that clearly specifies the person that the warrant is for, or the places that the warrant allows the officer to search. Um, and then an invalid warrant would be a notice of arrest by an ICE officer, and it's signed by an ICE officer. It's called the notice of arrest of an alien, I think. I have in our presentations, we do like a side-by-side comparison of what is, but you should definitely know the difference. And I can send that to you. And if you want to circulate that with the checklist, that might be helpful. But learning
Sure.
to identify what is grounds for a valid or a legal search is really important. Understanding what your rights are in that situation, and then it's always a balance, right, of your rights versus the risks of um, asserting those rights, right? Like you
Right.
can be subject to a prolonged detention in the sense that you could be held and not be free to leave until that officer verifies your status if you choose to remain silent. And so um, and if you have certain statuses, immigration status, then it might not be in your best interest to remain silent, right? Like you might want to let the officer know that you're a US citizen or an LPR or whatever your status is. And so um, I think each individual has to like kind of weigh that risk and make a determination of what they would do in that kind of situation. And I think, just plan for the worst case scenario. And so that way you're prepared for anything that might happen. Um, and always have your attorney's number, a red card, and the
Yeah.
red card, and there's like a few phrases that everyone should learn in English, regardless of you have the right to ask for an interpreter, but I choose to remain silent because gestures are not your invocation of your right. So saying no or nodding your head yes or no doesn't, you know. So those
So
phrases you should definitely try to learn in English so that you can assert them if you choose to.
I also noticed on the checklist for domestic travel that you still included a valid passport with at least 6 months validity. Of course, we've always advised this for international travel. But so that means that, someone whose passport is expiring, they should go ahead and get that renewed now, right?
I think so, yeah. I think you shouldn't be traveling on any documents that have an expiration date that is, imminent.
So we talked about checkpoints and if you're driving my car, how about if we're going by train, bus, like Greyhound or something?
Hmm.
Um, should you carry the same kind of documents with you as well? And the follow up to that, that scenario of let's just say I'm a B2 visa holder and I have then I don't want to talk. Um, is that something I say? Is like, I want to contact my attorney. Is that something I can say? Or do I not have that right?
You definitely have the right to say that you like to consult with your attorney or before answering any questions. That doesn't prevent them from taking you into custody, into immigration custody, or asking or kind of holding you there without you being free to leave until they've confirmed certain information. But you don't have to sign anything. You don't have to answer any questions without having first spoken to an attorney. Um, and You said something that reminded me, but now I forgot. So,
No, I said, if you're going on a train or like on a
oh yeah,
bus,
yeah. So
yeah.
CBP officials, ICE officials have a lot of latitude to enter public buses and ask questions about immigration status. And so you should have all of those documents. And this applies to domestic, international, whatever type of travel by plane. You should have all of these documents on your person, like in a carry-on bag. Nothing should be in your checked luggage. Nothing should be out of reach in case you need to access it. Um, so all of these copies of your status documents and documents of your family members for mixed status families, like whoever is the designated person should have that on them at all times.
Yeah. Wonderful. Any other last thoughts, on what people should have on their minds right now during the season? Of course, we want everyone to have a good time, which is why we're providing these tips. We want everyone to be safe. Any last thoughts?
No, I feel like I sound constantly in my professional life like a bah humbug all the time, just saying like,
No.
don't do this, you shouldn't do that. But you
Yeah,
should definitely consult with an attorney. I think every situation is so different, even if it's largely similar to someone else's, there's probably nuances in your case that
yeah,
only a qualified, experienced immigration attorney who has knowledge about your specific case would be in the best position to answer, I think.
yeah. Rohit?
Final thoughts?
Yeah,
Well,
final thoughts.
travel safe. We're gonna circulate the checklist through our advocacy newsletter. So tune into that, and then our next uh, our next series will be next year. It's weird to say.
Mhm.
And we're gonna likely talk about adjustment of status interviews and how they've been going kind of crazy or not expected across the nation. So tune in next month, next year. And yeah, Lolita, I think that's that's our plug for the next show.
That's right.
And whatever new thing happens, we'll talk about.
Thank you so much, Arwa, for joining us. You gave us so much valuable information. We will be sure to put it, like Rohit said, in his advocacy newsletter that goes out. We want to make sure everyone has this on hand, literally as a checklist that you've provided. It is full of great information. So I want to thank you for joining us today.
Thank
Thanks
you. Thank
so
you so
much.
much for having me.
Okay.
Thanks, guys.
Happy
Take
holidays,
care.
everyone.
Happy
Happy
Happy New
holidays.
holidays.
Year. Have a great
Take
Stay
day.
care.
warm.